Oh shoot, I think it's too late for that. Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, I think we'll get started. Hi everyone. My name is Daniel, the president of the project, and we welcome you to the first ever webinar on our Twitch. Um, the first slide is just following us on social. So if you have Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, please go follow us. And if you want to join our Discord community, please go do so at join.bitproject.org. So today's webinar is going to be on our amazing high school students that we work with through our Bit Heroes program. So yeah, we're going to first start by introducing the program. So Chloe and I are going to be talking a little bit about our experiences working with the high school students, as well as the importance of what we are doing as part of Bit Heroes, and hopefully how you can contribute if you are someone in the industry. So a little bit more about me and Bit Project. So my name is Daniel. Again, hi, I'm Daniel. I am a developer advocate at Forestry, which is a company that does headless CMS that is Git backed. I'm also the president and founder of Bit Project, and I wear two hats. So there's a fun little animation of me wearing two awesome, amazing hats. So a little bit about me. So I graduated with a dual degree in electrical and computer engineering from UC Davis. And when I first started choosing my major, I was imagining these stock footage like pictures of people on their screens with like three computers with me like making computers that changed the world. But when I actually got to school, it was really depressing because our programming labs are literally in a basement that looks like a mental hospital. So that's me passed out after a long night of programming. So you can see that like I was not the most encouraged to go into the tech career once I realized how kind of boring and kind of terrible my programming classes were. But luckily, I was really involved in web development, and I decided to submit a talk at a conference about my experiences teaching web dev to my friends. And I really loved starting to talking with people and doing things in the community instead of just programming in a dingy basement. So that's a picture of me doing my first tech talk at a small conference in LA. And what I ended up realizing was that tech is not what I thought it was. There's things that are outside of the main software engineering thing. Like there's roles in sales, HR, IT, marketing, diversity and inclusion, other fields. And that's kind of when I first realized why it's important to learn the soft skills that are necessary in the tech industry. So whenever students watch like hacking or computers in TV shows, like it's usually some white guy or some guy just typing furiously into a computer with like really, really cool looking code. But what we wanted to teach students and why I established the Bit Heroes program was to make sure to impart to students that tech is not just about coding alone, but it's all about teamwork and collaboration. It's all about finding solutions on Google, Stack Overflow, or your teammates, and actually knowing how to communicate to build really cool projects together. So that's kind of why I started the Bit Heroes program, is to understand exactly how tech industry and tech engineers work together effectively in the industry. So yeah, Chloe.
Hello. Can everyone hear me all right? Yes, yes? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Cool. I'm going to assume we're all good, and I am going to begin. Hi, everyone. I'm Chloe Condon. I had the extreme pleasure of working with these incredible students the last couple weeks here now, and it's been such an exciting time. And I am very, very excited for them to share your projects with you today. But in the meantime, I am going to share with you a little bit about myself and how I came to be involved with Bit Project. I'm going to assume everyone can hear me, so I am going to go ahead and get started. All right. So you're probably wondering how I got here. Hello, everyone. I'm Chloe Condon. I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft. And I get to work with students, which is my favorite part of my job. I get to work with incredibly smart, amazing students. But my background to get here, I actually never was a computer science student. I have worked in computer science about the last 5 years, but I actually come here by way of a theater degree. I pursued a degree in theater from San Francisco State University, and I also attended a performing and fine arts academy high school, a charter school called Natomas Charter School. So I did not have any exposure to computer science when I was in high school. So it really means a lot to me to work with these very, very incredibly talented, smart kids on their projects. So Daniel asked me what the title of this talk should be, and I said soft skills, hard projects, because these kids made very, very difficult projects and learned some really incredible soft skills as well. So I just have a couple slides here to share about my experience connecting with and working with students at Bit Project. Alrighty. And Daniel, please tell me in the chat if folks can't hear me. I have myself muted a couple places, so I'm not hearing two Chloes. All righty. So as I mentioned before, my background is in the performing arts. While these kids are going off and probably going to start their first internships and get their first careers in tech, I was at their age off and doing musical theater around the Bay Area. But what I learned from being a musical theater performer I've been able to transfer those skills into what I do every day as a cloud advocate at Microsoft. And what I love so much about Bit Project is they are able to bring those soft skills into the program, which is something that is not taught in boot camps, in high school computer science classes. We learn the fundamentals of what programming is and how to code and how to learn language, but oftentimes our education programs don't cover essential things, which Bit Project covers, which I put on this slide. So everything from documentation, tutorial writing. If you are an engineer and you deal with documentation every day, you know how important it is to have this skill. Public speaking, presentation skills. These students have gotten real life feedback on sessions, or real back feedback sessions, I should say, on their projects. And they've been able to work with their teammates, the PM that we're going to hear from very shortly here, from their instructors. They've worked on a deadline with a team. This isn't just some side project that they're doing for fun. They actually got to collaborate on GitHub and do pull requests. And these are the skills that beyond the fundamentals, beyond the algorithms, beyond the whiteboarding and the coding challenges that are really essential to be able to be a successful engineer working in the field. And they also got to build a project completely remotely and learn with others. And I could not be prouder of these very, very talented students. I found these photos, which were actually very hard to find, if you can believe it. And these are mostly for the students to embarrass myself with. But this is what I was doing in high school. It was very hard to find these photos because I was not even on the internet, I should say, until I got to college. But I was doing musical theater. I was singing and tap dancing and dressing up like a mermaid on stage. So I really do mean it when I say I believe the children are our future. To quote Whitney Houston, these are some of the smartest kids I have ever worked with. Their projects are incredible. They're all going to be my bosses someday. And I couldn't be prouder for them to be showing off their projects today. So without further ado, that's about it for me. I'm going to send it on over here to Daniel and turn my sound on so I can hear y'all. All right.
Hey, so I think we're gonna introduce Lisa, who's our first presenter. So yeah, Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about our project? And Chloe, can you comment a little bit about your experiences with using maybe the Face API and kind of the fun things you've been able to do with it?
Yes, so I'm so excited that so many people decided to use the Face API, mainly because it's probably my favorite one to work with. From everything from Mario Kart astrology and getting emotions from different cosplay characters to using it to detect happiness or sadness or age in my friends. It was really, really fun to see the students work with this.
Yeah, Lisa, how was your experience? Like, how would you say, like, with working with the Face API?
I really enjoyed it. When I first was looking over all of the different resources that Microsoft Azure had to offer, I thought the idea that this technology could be used to analyze these faces and photos was really fascinating. So for me to work with that and put that in my project was really fun all around.
That sounds awesome. We'd love to hear more. Take it away,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah, so when I first was looking at how to use my project, one of the things I had to look at was going over how the Face API worked. And initially, I wasn't really sure on how to connect all these images to the Face API, but by looking at a bunch of tools that Microsoft had and looking at all the different resources I had available, that helped me figure out how to connect the Face API. And in the end, I was able to connect the Face API so that when an image was inputted, I could get back all the different emotions that the Face API detected in the photo. Okay, so now to present my project. So to introduce myself again, hi everyone, I'm Lisa Leung, and I'm from Monte Vista High School. And my project was to create a photo analyzer extension through Google Chrome. And to start off, like I said, when I was first looking at all the different resources that Microsoft Azure had, I looked at the Face API and I thought that concept was really interesting. So for my project, I wanted to find a way to implement the Face API into a way where users could easily click on it and then get back data from their image. Or in this case, realize that this stock photo of a smiling man was smiling. So when I first thought of this project idea, I had a pretty large idea and pretty large project that I wanted to accomplish. And I wanted it to be some sort of tool where if you had a Zoom call or basically any video or image, you could input it through a tool and then the tool would give back all this data and the emotions that were detected by the API. But because I had actually no coding experience on how to implement APIs and put this data all into these extensions and these tools, I ended up looking at all the resources that were available online. And surprisingly and pretty conveniently, I found this tutorial from Microsoft that taught users to upload image data in the cloud with Azure storage. And to me, this looked perfect. And it actually told me that it only took 10 minutes to read. So I was really excited to find this tutorial. But in reality, the tutorial actually took me 3 days to follow. After a lot of renditions, I eventually realized that my whole error was just putting in the code commands within the tutorial wrong and just putting the different names of the code commands incorrectly. But once I figured it out and had inputted all the commands correctly according to the steps within the tutorial, I ended up with a website where users could upload an image and then have that image uploaded to Microsoft's cloud. And then within this cloud, the web tutorial made it so that the image could be accessed from a URL as long as users had it. So to make sure that users could upload those images. So from there, I needed to consider how to connect these images to the actual Face API. And once again, for context, my coding experience was pretty limited to one computer science class in high school that I took my sophomore year. So because of that, my options were limited to trying to build a web app using Azure Functions or using a Logic app. But in the end, I ended up choosing logic apps, mostly because I didn't know the coding language within the web tutorial, so I couldn't use the web app and integrate that directly. And furthermore, even though I did know a little bit of Python, because Azure Functions required me to code Python through a Linux desktop, I ended up going with logic apps just for the ease of being able to code within the browser. And then within the browser, by using logic apps, that actually ended up being super convenient for me. Because I didn't have that much coding experience, a lot of the code and even using GitHub was super unfamiliar to me. But having the logic app interface organized by these steps allowed me to pretty easily look at what I was doing, as well as search for any triggers or actions that fit my purpose. So it ended up making a lot of sense to me. And even if I did need to customize it and go a little bit more in depth, then I always had the option of switching to code view, which I did end up doing later in my project. So to code the logic app, the first thing that I had to figure out was how to connect the image to the face API. And surprisingly, this was super easy within the logic app interface because, like I said, it basically let you search for any trigger that you wanted and then put that into your code. So when I searched for the blob storage trigger, that gave me a trigger called when a blob is added or modified, which actually seemed to work perfectly for me since I knew that every time users uploaded a photo with the website, then a blob was added to this public storage container. So I could pick that trigger pretty easily off the bat. But once I had figured out the trigger, I needed to know how to code the API to actually detect faces and analyze the emotions within the image. And once again, surprisingly, this part was pretty easy. Not only did the Microsoft Azure portal let me easily create the Face API resource within my resource group, but even within the Logic app, there were these commands called detect faces that let me connect the API to the web app that I was making, as long as I had those keys. So once I had that figured out, then all I had to do for the Logic app was try and connect the data to a way that users could access it. Like I said in the past, with the web app, it basically created this image that was uploaded, and as long as people had the image name and the name of the storage container, they could go to the right URL and then see the image that they had uploaded. So keeping that into mind, I tried to use the same type of logic within my actual Logic app. So for this part, I just decided that every time the Face API detected a new face, then it would create a blob, and within that blob, I would have users put in the estimated age, the estimated gender, and the estimated smile score. And while this was pretty rudimentary and only offered like the most basic form of data, this was okay for me just in the meantime, and I decided to move on to coding the Chrome extension. So for the Chrome extension, once again, I wasn't super familiar with how to code HTML, but because there were so many resources available online, I could pretty easily figure out how to code the most basic part of the Chrome extension. So once I put in the descriptions and put in all the fonts and images that I wanted within the Chrome extension, then I had to figure out how to actually make the tool usable and connect that to the web app. So the problem was within my Chrome extension, I wanted it to be so that every time I clicked one of these two buttons within the Chrome extension, users would be directed to a URL where they could upload their photo, and then once they clicked the second button, they would be taken to all of the image data that the Face API had gathered. And to do this, I needed to find a way to implement JavaScript within my Chrome extension, which is yet again another type of code that I wasn't super familiar with. And this actually took me a while to figure out, and I tried a bunch of different methods on trying to implement the image name and directing that to a new URL within the button, and I actually ended up not figuring it out. But my novel solution was just to make the users do more work and have them copy and paste the URL once they were able to input their image name within this small input bar within the Chrome extension. And then finally, once I had the Chrome extension configured, there were still a couple of issues within the Logic app that I wanted to fix. The first one was that within the Logic app, I had chosen the trigger to have the Logic app respond every time a blob was uploaded. But the problem with this was that instead of actually responding to a blob being uploaded, it just checked the storage container with the blob inside it every 10 seconds, which made it a pretty inefficient system. So to fix this, I just made it so that the logic app was triggered from an Event Grid subscription, so that every time the Event Grid subscription registered a new blob being uploaded, then the logic app would be triggered. So this made the logic app a lot more efficient. And then finally, I just wanted to make the image information that the Face API gathered a lot more complex, and I didn't want them to only display smile score. And for some reason within the Logic app, they just didn't have the default command to put in all of the more in-depth emotion scores. But because there was a lot of documentation available within Microsoft's Face API, that made it pretty easy for me to go within code view and then basically just modify the commands a little bit so that I had happiness, sadness, anger, and all these other emotion scores. And in addition to that, I also was able to add mustache intensity and beard intensity, which in my opinion is the best part of this Logic app. So that basically summarized my project. In the end, I had a Chrome extension where users could press buttons that would lead them to an Azure-based website where they could upload a photo to the cloud. And then the Azure Logic app would register that upload, connect to the Face API, and then the Face API would analyze that image, put that image within a publicly available blob with a URL that anyone could access. And then finally, the Chrome extension would let users access that URL and eventually access the information that the Face API gathered about their photo. And to basically explain this in more in depth, I'll be showing a demo of my Chrome extension. So in this case, when you click on this button, we'll be using this photo also of this man with a bearded or a knit beard hat. Once you click the Chrome extension, then it will take you to this drop-down menu where you can click the first button, and then that will take you to a website, which sometimes takes a long time to load. But once you're there, then you can choose the file that you want to upload. In this case, I named the image of the dude with the bearded hat Beardo. Okay. 1 second. Yeah, so I'll be using that image. And then once you upload it, then you'll receive back a message that the file was successfully uploaded to the Azure Blob storage. And then finally, the last step is just to input in the image URL or the name of the image. In this case was beardo.jpg with 3 O's. And then finally, when you copy and paste that URL, then that will take you to all of the data about the photo that you uploaded. And in this case, that meant that they detected that the man was 44. They estimated that he had 97% happiness and 3% neutrality in his face. And then finally, the best part is that the Face API was able to detect that his bearded hat wasn't a real beard and actually a hat, so they gave him a beard intensity of 0. So yeah, that was basically my project. In the end, the project ended up being pretty difficult for me. At the beginning, I set out with this incredibly ambitious project, but once I realized what I was dealing with, the time frame, and also my coding knowledge, I was initially pretty disappointed with the project that I envisioned myself creating. But in the end, I actually really enjoyed the process. Not only did I learn about how to use all these different resources of how to code, like GitHub and all of these documentation resources, but furthermore, it inspires me to want to keep coding. In the future, I would want to continue to work on my Chrome extension and make it work so that it was more convenient for the user, as well as make all of these more coding projects where I basically have infinite possibilities. But if you want to check out my project, you can check it out at this GitHub link under the Bit Project repository. And within there, there's all the code that you need to deploy the web app and to create the Logic app where you can code it. But I had a lot of fun with this project, and I hope you had fun listening. Thank you guys for listening, and yeah.
That was really awesome.
Yay!
Oh
Oh my
my gosh,
gosh.
yay! Do you want to go
I'm
first,
so
Chloe?
excited. Yeah, I, first of all, I love this presentation. I love this project. I love anything with the Face API. But what I loved was that this API was smart enough to detect that a beard hat was not, in fact, a beard, but it was a hat. Also, I just love that there are variables of beard intensity and mustache intensity. I mean, come on.
Yeah, so
Great, great.
Lisa, I have a question. Oh yeah. So Lisa, I had this really interesting question from Egna. What inspired to pursue this project and this idea?
Great question.
Well, when I was first looking at all of the different options that we had for thinking of projects, I thought the idea of artificial intelligence was super interesting to me. So when I looked at all of the different applications that Azure had, one of the APIs that it listed under the artificial intelligence category was the Face API. So I just wanted to explore that. And plus, I remember like a couple years ago, there was this website that got pretty popular where you could estimate your age. And so if I could create something pretty similar, that would sound like a really fun project to me.
That's really awesome.
Absolutely. And it is super fun. It's been really fun to test it out with different images, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Chloe, did you have another question for Lisa?
Yeah, I did. I put it in the Twitch chat. Excuse me, Lisa, but why are you so cool? This was such a cool project. How dare you be so cool? That was just my question. How are you so cool? No, I think this is such an amazing project. It uses so many different pieces of Azure, and I think it's such a great example of what you can build. And I'm so proud that you just basically started learning to program very recently. This is a wonderful, very deeply technical project. So, bravo!
Woo!
Thank
Yay.
you.
Thanks, Lisa, so much for your project. We're really looking forward to publishing your blog so other people from all around the world can follow along as they build their own bearded hat detector. That should be the name, I think. But anyways, thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank
Okay, up next is Bo. Hey, Bo, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. So I heard that your product is about IoT. What does that stand for?
Yeah, so it's about IoT, which is Internet of Things. I'll go more into it during my presentation, but basically it uses Wi-Fi or like a Wi-Fi connection to send data from hardware to a software.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of IoT. I love automating all the things. So when Bo mentioned he wanted to do an IoT project, I was like, Bo, this is going to be hard. Hardware is hard, but I believe in you. And wow, he blew us out of the water.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm super excited for your presentation because as a hardware person, I can't believe you did hardware. I found hardware to be so difficult. So kudos for you tackling hardware. Super excited
yeah,
for your
hardware was
presentation.
it was pretty difficult.
Yeah. So let's take it away.
Okay, so I'll reintroduce myself. So my name is Bo Hayes Pollard, and I am a rising junior at Brookline High School. And for my project, I created a IoT heart rate monitor. Okay, so before I get into what my project is, how I made it, and all the logistics, I want to talk about how I came up with it, what inspired me to create it, and stuff like that. So before I actually was enrolled in the program, and I looked at the application. I knew we were gonna make some cool projects using Azure. I knew I wanted to create something that wasn't just a website or a application online. I kind of wanted to use hardware. So I also had a tad bit of experience using a Raspberry Pi in the past, so I brought that up. And the second part was I also wanted to create something that was useful and I could actually use in life. And then that's when my mom and grandpa come into the story. They're both probably watching right now, so hello. My mom always told me about how my grandpa has a heart condition, and his heart is pretty irregular and it's not always on beat. So I decided, oh, you know what? I could make a heart rate monitor that could track that, and it would notify us if anything bad happened. And in theory, it could also alert emergency services. So that's really the background story on my project. So next up, I have my flowchart. This is a overview of how I created the project, and it also just shows you like the building blocks really, what I used. So you can see I started with the hardware. I used a Arduino IDE. I'll get more into that, and I show how I used Azure, which is the main feature of this project, and the Twilio API, which basically sends a text message after it receives a HTTP trigger. So going into the hardware, I did not have a lot of experience. Like I said, I only messed with a Raspberry Pi once before, so this stuff was pretty new to me. And using IoT was super cool. I only heard it once or twice before in like science articles and newspapers I saw. But after I did a bit more research on it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I kind of want to, mess with this. And as well, it's super cool for my project, especially because I don't want to have a heart rate monitor where my grandpa is just sitting in his chair. He has to be like plugged into a wire with his computer. I wanted to use IoT so he could be walking around the house doing what grandpas do, and he wouldn't have to worry about the cable being extended too long or any problems like that. So next up, I made this really cool drawing. It took me like 20 or so hours, just showing off the hardware. I have it in person. I'll show that later. But basically, I have a simple heart rate monitor that just tracks the user's heart rate using a analog mode, and then I have the Adafruit has a feather, which is a Wi-Fi module. This is what's doing most of the D2C, which is data to cloud, and this is what is transferring all the taken heart rates to the IoT hub. And then on the right, I have a more in-depth photo of the Wi-Fi module, which is the ESP8266. I didn't have much experience as well, like I said, but after watching a few blogs and doing some research on GitHub, I found some super nice images that kind of taught me how to do it. And at the end of the day, I didn't electrocute myself, so that was super nice. But the hardware was a lot of fun to make, and I think it was the easiest, yeah, by far the easiest part of my project. So this is where I had a lot of confusion. I wasn't able to find a lot of references. I mean, I was, but most of them were outdated. But for actually sending the data I used a program called Arduino. They make a lot of controllers that you can use for mini projects, but specifically for my project, I used its Wi-Fi based client with the IoT protocol. These libraries were already built for me, so I didn't have to do a lot of coding because there were a lot of samples out there that enabled me to send data over a connection. But this was super cool because I really didn't feel like creating and looking through thousands of pages of documents to find a way to send data. So it really helped. Also, I had to use a connection string from the IoT hub to send data from the ESP8266. So a connection string is just like a Wi-Fi password, or let's say a API token if anyone has experience with that. But basically, you don't want to give it away. It's really important. It's linked to your account. It's linked to your program. It's like the security protocol behind whatever you're using. So I've actually posted mine on GitHub when sharing like a Discord bot or something cool I've made. And it's not really, the best of times when you have to email the company asking them to disable this one and get you a new one. But luckily I didn't do it this time. And on the right side, I have a graph. This is actually in the IoT Hub interface. The UI shows that actually it received a message. So now I have that important connection between the software and the cloud computing architecture, which I used in this project. So the code behind all of this is pretty complex. There's a lot of different things doing different things, but these are the most important loops. On the left side, I have a loop that iterates through the heart rate that I got from the analog read. Basically, it's that the device put out, and whenever it detects that the integer or the number went over 100, it will call the function on the right side, which sends the integer that it got. So let's say I'm here, I'm sitting down, and heart rate goes to 120. It'll know that it went above 100, and it will send that data point to the IoT hub. So as you saw in the other slide, on the right side, there's a graph with the connection that it actually connected. And there's actually some interaction between Azure and the software I used. So this was like the main part of my project without using Azure, but the main problem was debugging everything. Everything was very out of date. It was really outdated. As you can see on the left, the latest GitHub repository that I could find was a lump sum of years old, 4 or 5 years old, and I must have went through 40 or 50 of them looking for some working code or at least documentation on how to actually send data. So this was a problem. And the other problem, I think my face cam is blocking it, but basically drivers were super important for the device I'm using. So this is the device I'm using, and it's plugged in via a micro USB cable, which is, it's pretty simple, but for it to actually work on your computer, you have to install a few drivers made by some third-party sources. And I didn't find that out after, hours of plugging stuff in and trying to see if it worked. So let's see how Azure helps out. So if you don't know, Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing architecture service. For my project, I used 3 main things. I used a IoT hub, of course. I used a Logic app, and I also used a Event Grid. They're really not that different because they're all integrated between each other. But basically, as an overview, the IoT hub receives the data. The Logic app has an action and trigger that calls the Twilio API. So basically, when something happens, it'll send a text message. And the Event Grid itself is the trigger for the Logic app. And I found out that late into my project, the Event Grid actually is integrated with the IoT hub. So there wasn't a lot of programming on that part. It was just a few clicks of a button, and that was all set up. So that was super nice and helpful because I really didn't feel like coding a whole nother function or process that had to be running. And as you can see, I had data going from the Wi-Fi card, which is the software, the hardware itself, to the software, and eventually it reached the IoT hub. And once I actually got data in the IoT hub, I needed to find a way to connect it to the Logic app I'm using. So a Logic app is like a more user-friendly and basic version of Azure Functions. I could have used both, but the Logic app already had integration with the Twilio API, so it was super easy just to use that. I just had to plug in some JSON schema, which is like a template data type form, and everything was connected there. So I had the Logic app set up, so when it receives a HTTP request, I used a webhook for this. So basically, when this template link was clicked, or it was ran by in this case, my Event Grid, something would happen. So I had my Logic app run. That was the trigger. And the action was to send a text message to my phone number. I'll get more into the Twilio API because there's a bunch of stuff you can do with it. And, for finding that connection really between the IoT hub, I use the Event Grid, which is looking at the telemetry between the devices. So once again, D2C, which is device to cloud. So it really looked for data telemetry. It looked for a connection. So whenever data was sent from the ESP to the IoT hub, it knew something happened, and it would run that webhook with a endpoint of the link from my Logic app, and it would trigger the Twilio API. So that was the main function that Azure helped out with my project, because this cloud computing service was super easy to use. I didn't really have to host my own servers or create something on my computer itself. So nothing was local for this project. Oh, one sec. Okay, so using the Twilio API to send a text message. So what is it? So the Twilio API, like any other API, it has a connection string. You use it with another application to send a text message. So it has a lot of features. It can like list off text messages, blah, 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 stuff like that. But the function I used, it really just had to send a text message to a phone number. So I got this temporary phone number, this Twilio phone number, and it knew to send a text message that I inputted to my phone number. So this phone, it was connected. So whenever my heart rate goes above 100, I get a text message on here. But a cool feature about the Twilio API is you can actually add more than one phone numbers. So let's say I wanted, my mom and my aunt to know that something happened as well. I can add that, so all three of us get the phone number or the text message. So I'm gonna try and recreate a live simulation of what would happen. This is theoretical because I don't want to actually, have a heart attack or have something go wrong. So I have the device here. I have the heart rate sensor here, which is attached to my wrist. My heart rate's probably pretty high already, nervous and stuff like that. But for the demonstration purposes, I'm gonna do some cool jumping jacks to demonstrate my heart rate going above 100 beats per minute. So yeah. Okay, so after a couple hours of running around because I'm like, a Division 1 athlete and stuff, you can tell my heart rate's going up because I'm out of breath. So now what happens is this is already flashed with the program. So on the screen, you can see on the left, the IoT hub has received a signal. In that case, my heart rate went above 100 twice. In this case, it's probably doing it 10 or 12 times. So I'm gonna get a bunch of text messages. But on the right side, you can see a text message. So this is really what happens. So I'll get a text message on my phone that says, this is an automated alert. Your heart rate has gone above 100 beats per minute, and your contacts have been notified. Ignore that it's from Susan. I couldn't change that. Imagine there's just from like your heart rate notification bot or something like that. But yeah, so that was really my project. It works. It's pretty cool. There were a bunch of things I wanted to do as well that I really didn't have time for. But I think at the end of the day, it all worked out. The project was pretty cool, and I had a lot of fun actually using the hardware. So the overall experience was super positive. Definitely 5 stars. I had a lot of fun working with the hardware and using Azure. Azure was a lot of fun because the integration between the programs was easy to use, and I didn't have to do that much work there. And I think the only, negative and bad part of this project was the debugging. And, with debugging, it's always not fun, but especially with this project, I couldn't count how many hours I was on Stack Overflow or I was on the Microsoft documentation for the IoT Hub. It was a lot of work, but you know what? If you want to try this project out yourself, you don't need to do the exact same thing. You could try it with like, I don't know, temperature or humidity, like something like that. That sounds pretty cool. I'll leave the GitHub link. It has my code, it has a blog and a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. But basically it's all there for you. So you don't need to do what I did and look for 40 to 50 GitHub repos that teach you absolutely nothing. So that was my project. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
Yay!
Oh my God! Yay!
Well, I'm so proud of you. First of all, open source for the win. I couldn't agree more. I will never forget when I made my first IoT project at a company hackathon, and myself and 3 very talented senior engineers could not figure out where to get started. There's so much different pieces of documentation and ways to build hardware. So you're welcome to being an engineer, very relatable content saying that you spent your time on Stack Overflow. These are the real skills that we face every day as engineers. I'm so proud to build an IoT to demo an IoT device live in a live demo. Kudos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't need to do it, but I felt like, it was necessary to add some entertainment to this demonstration.
Definitely. I think exercise is something that we should market in the future as one of the perks of joining a program. You just get your
Yeah.
Division One
Free jumping
athlete
jacks.
exercising.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a quick question from one of our viewers. It says these projects are really cool, but how much experience do you think you need to try out these projects and using your tutorials?
Okay, so since my project was pretty open source and there was a lot out there, I myself didn't have too much experience with IoT. I had a bit of experience with coding, like as in the background, but for what I used, there was like not much. Like you could be a beginner at coding and create this project. You just need, you have to pursue or not pursue. You have to push through and keep looking through the documentation, looking at repos, finding stuff that's out there and that's open source
And
for
I
you to
feel like
use.
you probably learned the importance of good documentation, which, oh my goodness, I promise this isn't a Twilio ad, but Twilio has some fantastic, really gamified documentation that's very helpful. But these are skills that as engineers, when we make these products and these programs, people also need the directions. So you're helping by open sourcing this and putting more directions out for more people.
Yeah.
I have a question
Definitely.
from the chat as well. If you had the opportunity to start all over, would you still want to pursue the same project? Why or why not? Ooh, that's a great question because you mentioned you ran into a lot of bugs and debugging and roadblocks.
Yeah, now that it's over, I think in the beginning I had a lot of passion for this and it was like, oh my God, I want to do it. It's gonna be so cool using the IoT hub and stuff. But honestly, I would do it again. Like even all the hours of debugging, I was still learning an important skill. And at the end of the day, it worked, which was super cool.
The sign of a true engineer.
Yeah, I think you're just one step closer to just changing the world. And thank you so much for your project. It was amazing. And I have to
Yeah,
say,
it was a bunch of
watching
fun.
you jumping jacks and then have a text message come to your phone, that is just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to send a device over to your grandpa.
He's in this call probably, so hello.
Ooh, well, we'll ship over a product to you soon, Grandpa.
Well, thank you both so much for your amazing project. I think next
Yeah,
up
no
we have
problem.
Natalie with her really awesome project. Oh, hey, Natalie, how are you doing today? I don't think we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm good. How are you?
Natalie,
I'm
I'm
great.
so
Can you hear me?
excited. Yes. We're so excited to hear about your project. All the projects are my favorites, but yours involves one of my favorite things, which is, I'll let you announce your project. No spoilers.
Okay, so I made a song recommendation app that recommends a song based off of your mood using the Face API.
Singing. So this is a
That,
problem that I feel like all of us face, right? We are on Spotify all the time. We get these recommendations, but we need a song that matches our vibe, our mood. And you literally built that for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to recommend songs, and I felt like it was a
so
necessary
before we
thing
get,
that people need.
yeah, so Natalie, before we get started, could you tell us your favorite song so the
Ooh,
people in
good
the audience
question.
can know?
Uh, uh, I don't know, Modern Loneliness
Okay.
by
Okay.
Wow,
Mauve.
that's really cool.
Very
Let's see
relevant.
if the song recommendation engine recommends that song to see how
Oh
cool
man.
it is. Anyway, take it away, Natalie. We're super.
Okay, so I'm assuming that you guys can hear me. So, hi, my name is Natalie. I just graduated from Los Altos High School, and today I'm going to be talking about my project, which is called Better Song Recs. So, I would say that unlike Bo, I'm not really solving any like global health issues here, but I pretty much wanted to make a song recommendation app because I felt like the ones I've been getting recently are a little bit subpar. So yeah, better song recs. And for the second part of my project, I was inspired by the Face API that Lisa also mentioned. It's part of Microsoft's cognitive services, and essentially it returns a bunch of cool data on an image that you submit. So if you send over a picture of a face, it'll tell you like the age or hair color or mustache intensity, as she mentioned. And also it will tell you the emotions that the person is feeling or how they look like they feel. And essentially, I thought this was really cool. I wanted to combine this with my song recommendation idea to essentially make an app that recommends songs based off of your mood. So these are like the three major components I thought my app needed to have. The first part would be an area for the user to actually submit an image or a picture of their face. The second part would be an Azure function because I'm required to use it, and I would essentially use this function to analyze the emotions on the person's face. And then the third part would be to recommend a very high quality and fitting song for the person's mood. So this is a more kind of technical flowchart of what my project's doing. There's essentially three parts. So we've got a web page right here that gets an image and then sends it over to our Azure function. Our Azure function will use the Face API to basically get data that's like, this person is sad. And then using the Spotify API, we're going to get a sad song to recommend to the person. So that's kind of the breakdown. The first part that I'm going to be focusing in on is the actual Azure function and how it interacts with the Face API. So if you're unfamiliar, Azure Functions is marketed as this cloud or serverless cloud computing platform where people can write small pieces of code called functions and then deploy them super easily without having to worry about the infrastructure or server backend stuff. And it's also event driven, which means that your function or code will run every single time a certain event happens. So in my case, I use an HTTP trigger, which means that basically when anyone makes a request from my web page, my code will run. And as to what my function actually does, it essentially sends over an image to the Face API and then gets, and then gets data back about how the person's feeling. So I'm not sure if you can see the code, it might be blocked, but here's an API endpoint. That's the Face API. And then I'm also specifying in my parameters that I want to know the emotions in the image. And once that's done, I'm sending all the results back to my web page. So at this point, we've pretty much completed analyzing the emotions in the image. And the kind of second half of the project is to use the Spotify API to get a song recommendation. And how that works is the Spotify API has this great feature that actually allows you to get a list of song recommendations based off of a couple parameters that you specify. So the two required parameters are seed artists and seed tracks. And a seed is basically what your recommendations are based off of. Essentially, the API will go out and look for songs by your seed artist, or it'll go out and look for songs that are similar to your seed tracks. So for these, my first version of the project basically took two random songs from like the top 50 hits playlist and set those as my seeds because it was just an easy thing to do. And yeah, so two random songs for my seeds. And then my third parameter is called valence. And essentially, this is what controls the mood of your recommendations. So more specifically, valence is defined as a kind of numerical representation of how sad or happy a song is. So it ranges from 0 to 1, 0 being sad and 1 being happy. And how I kind of structured the logic around this parameter was if the person was like dominantly sad or dominantly a negative emotion, I would set the range for my valence to be from 0 to 0.3. So this means that the API can only recommend me songs that fit in this range, so only sad songs technically. And similarly, if the person was dominantly neutral, my range would be from 0.3 to 0.7. And then if the person was happy, it'd be from 0.7 to 1. So that's kind of how I filtered out like the right kind of songs and took mood into account. And basically, these three parameters combined would yield a list of song recommendations that have been generated based off of your two seeds or as many seeds as you want, and then filtered through using whatever I'm specifying as the range for the valence. So this was kind of the last piece, and this is the first version of my like web page. Essentially, you can see that there's an area here for people to submit an image, and in the middle, it'll show all the emotions in the image. Apparently, I am 100% happy, so good for me. And on the right side, there will be a song recommendation that has been generated by the Spotify API. So at this point, it worked. It did mostly what I wanted to. But the problem that I kept running into was recommendations were just not that great. I don't know why, but I kept different languages. So I decided to kind of tackle that issue by changing my seeds. So previously, I had just found kind of two randomly pretty popular songs as my seeds, but I felt like that was kind of vague. So I decided to change my seed artists and seed tracks to the user's top artists and tracks based on their Spotify listening data. But to do this meant that I would have to have the user log in and then give me some of their, personal listening history and information, which meant that I had to use something called OAuth. So OAuth is basically like a standard or protocol for getting users authenticated through a third-party app or service. So this sounds kind of complicated, but essentially, if you've ever seen like sign in with Google or log in with Facebook, like these functionalities basically use OAuth because they're having you sign into a third party and then pulling information from that login. So essentially what I wanted to do was have my user log into Spotify and then get some of their listening history so I could find their top tracks and top artists. So this is kind of a more detailed explanation of how OAuth really works. Essentially, the whole point of OAuth is to allow my application to access personal info, user info, without ever knowing the user's actual password. So it's like a security protocol measure. And essentially what's happening is the Spotify account service is kind of acting as like a middleman between my application and the user. So in order to get info, my application has to send a request through the account service for authorization. This will prompt the user to log in, and once they've entered their password and stuff, which I don't have access to, the account service will send my application something called an access token. And essentially an access token is this long, randomly generated string of characters that pretty much acts as my temporary password into the user's account. And every time I want user info, I have to send access token with the request because that is what proves that I'm indeed like authorized to get this info. So that's pretty much how OAuth works theoretically. And at this point, I knew like what I was supposed to do, but had no idea how to practically like put it into my application because I had no experience doing it and it's a little bit complicated. So this was definitely a challenge for me. And yeah, I never figured it out, but I didn't have to because Spotify actually did it for me. So the Spotify API is super well documented, and they actually provided this example code project with a repository that pretty much was just like a whole project with OAuth already implemented. So yeah, I just used some real impressive copy and paste skills and then added that into my project. It was really easy. And essentially, because I added this, now I could get some of the user's information, and I set the seed artists to be the user's top artists. I set the seed tracks as the user's top tracks, which I was hoping would yield some more personalized song recommendations. And definitely worked. This is what my project looked like after I added in some authorization. It looks pretty similar, but at the top, you see we've got this area that says who you're logged in as. And over here, we've got some song recommendations that, in my opinion, definitely got a lot better. They were just, less obscure and more personalized. And at this point, I was satisfied with like functionally how my project worked. I thought the song recommendations were pretty decent. And my main problem now was, as Daniel so nicely put it, was just that my webpage was a little bit ugly. And yeah, it doesn't look great. So I decided to focus on the user interface, and I did this through learning React. So React is this JavaScript library or kind of framework for developing front-end applications. Essentially, it allows you to make like cooler web pages, I guess. So I pretty much wanted to learn this so I could improve my own web page. So I took like a 5-hour crash course on React and pretty much converted my original HTML page into a React app. And I'm not really going to be getting into the code, but in very broad strokes, the process was something like this. So React pretty much allows you to, instead of like squashing all of your text or HTML onto one page, you can essentially split up your web pages into components. So you can see the three I've identified here. We've got like this user ID place, this image and emotions box, and then some song recommendations. So now that I pretty much broke up my page into components, they're like their own separate entities, and I could selectively render each component based on what the user needs to see. So this is done through something called state management or using state variables. Essentially, my web page has two possible states, and those states are not submitted and submitted. So not submitted pretty much indicates that the person has not yet like put in a file or uploaded an image for analysis yet. And if that's the case, we want to be seeing this screen on the left, which basically allows them to press choose file and then generate a playlist. And once that person has pressed generate playlist, we basically want to change the state to submitted and then render this box on the right, which is just all of your song recommendations, because that's what we want the person to see at that point. So by adding in this kind of state management thing using React components, I was able to streamline the workflow of my application and just make it overall a lot more. And finally, because I use React, I actually found this feature a couple days ago it's a library called React Webcam. And well, like the name implies, it basically allows you to add a webcam into your React project. And this was super easy. All I did was have this like import statement right here that imports the actual library and then render a webcam component. And this basically allowed me to just like stick a fully working webcam into my web page. And I basically did this because I felt like for my app, which is supposed to like recommend a song based on your current mood, being able to take a real-time picture probably made a little more sense than like having them upload a previously taken photo. So yeah, I added this webcam, and that was pretty much the last thing I did with React. At this point, my user interface was pretty much completed and my app was ready to be deployed. So here's kind of a demo. I'm going to be doing it in Safari. So it's deployed at the URL bettersongrec.herokuapp.com. And basically, here's the home page. You can press login with Spotify. And this will take you to another web page that here's essentially where all of these Spotify application code is deployed. And I got this through copy paste, hence you have this text right here, and you can press login again. And I'm already logged into Spotify on this browser, but if you weren't, it would prompt you to like enter in your password and stuff. So it says who I'm logged in as, and here's our webcam. So you can take a picture, and I'm gonna try to get a lot of emotions on my face, so something like that. And then you can press submit. Okay, 3, that's okay. Essentially, this is the final page of the application. We get to see our beautiful image right here. Right here, we've got emojis kind of indicating how the person feels. I thought it was just more fun than text, so I switched them. So I'm sad, neutral, and disgusted at the same time. And on the right, we've got 10 songs that have been recommended based on your image. And if you're not satisfied, you can also press regenerate, and it'll kind of reload the songs until you're satisfied. And because I now have access to like the users, not only data, but their actual account, I can actually go into their account and change some things around. So I made this feature which says create playlists from these songs. If I press that, it'll actually go into the person's account and make a new playlist. And here's the link to the playlist. If we press that, it'll open Spotify web player, I think, and essentially show you your new playlist. So yeah, I'm already logged into my account. There's a playlist here that's been generated called Better Song Recommendations. And we've got 10 songs here that supposedly fit your mood, I hope. And yeah, you can retake stuff. And then that's pretty much how my app works. Okay. So as kind of like an overall reflection on this process, I'd say it was definitely a really educational experience. Honestly, like in these 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I think I honestly learned more than I have in my 2 years of taking computer science classes in high school. It really just like forces you to go out and Google many things, copy paste things, and just like problem solve on your own. So if anyone's looking to get some practical experience, I definitely recommend like doing one of these projects or trying out your own and use Azure Functions because they're great. And yeah, that was my project. Thanks for listening.
Yay! Oh my gosh, so much fun. I just tweeted out, I love that the picture of you that's 100% happy. Of course, it recommended Good as Hell by Lizzo. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Perfect song. So obviously, you've tested this a lot. It works very well. We have a question in the chat here for you, which says, what would you say was the most difficult part of the project?
I'd say like getting started with like all of my code. I started out with the Azure function. Before this, I only knew Java because I've taken like AP Computer Science, but I was making my whole project in JavaScript. So like just starting out, I had like not a lot of experience. I basically took like a 2-day course in JavaScript. So yeah, writing my
And
Azure
you
function
learned
was kind of
React,
difficult.
right?
Yeah, I
You had
also
never
learned
learned React
React.
before.
Yeah.
For
I feel like once you get started with the code, it gets a lot easier because you know, learn how to like Google things and find stuff on Stack Overflow, like Bo said. And yeah, I think just like once you get started and familiarize yourself a bit, then everything will go great, even if you run into problems.
Stack Overflow is key. The key to being a
Yeah.
good software engineer is knowing how to search, how to Bing things, we say here at Microsoft.
How to
True.
do things. Natalie, I had a quick question from the chat. Could you share more about like you first learning JavaScript and writing JavaScript and making these API calls? Like, what was your experience when you were first learning how to do that? And any recommendations for any other students who are listening right now? Like, what would you tell them?
So I'd say JavaScript was easy for me to learn because I had prior experience because I already know Java. So if you know like any language, even if it's like Scratch or something like that, I'd say like that's super helpful in learning JavaScript. It's really just like a switch in syntax and a couple more like technical stuff. But really, if you have some experience, it shouldn't be hard to get started. And for stuff like learning APIs, I also didn't know what like an API was, but if there's something you can't figure out, know that like somewhere out there on the internet, someone else has probably figured it out for you. So like go and look for like even tutorials that are just like marginally related to what you're trying to do, and you'll find people doing like complete run-throughs or like video tutorials or like Medium vlogs and stuff, and you'll definitely be able to like just like learn from that. Like it's really easy.
Definitely. Well, I think your project was so cool and you knocked it out of the park. So I just want to say kudos. Thank you so much for doing an amazing project. It's been a joy to see you blossom into this like software engineer that knows how to do everything now. I think you're better than me at looking for things on Stack Overflow. So I just want to say thank you so much and I hope to see this app hopefully like fully developed so I can use it every single day in my daily routine. But
Yeah, I'm
anyways,
gonna
yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank
So
you.
thank you. Next we have Jesse. Jesse, are you there? Oh no, it's Megna. Sorry, I'm so sorry. It's
Magna
Megna.
is here.
It's Megna. Hey Megna, how are you
Hello.
doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantabulous, as Jesse would say. Yeah, so Megna, do you want to talk a little bit about your product? Could you give us a little sneak peek before you get your presentation?
Sure. So I'm going to be presenting about a scheduling bot in which I'll go a little bit deeper into during my presentation. But basically, it's just a way for us to get organized and keep track of all of our different events and reminders because, yeah, I know that all of us have a lot of things to do on a daily basis, and I felt like this was crucial.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Chloe, how has been your routine during quarantine? Do you kind of need a scheduler like what Megna has created?
What routine, Daniel? Yeah, I need this as a reminder. I actually wear a wearable. I wear a Fitbit, and I set a bunch of reoccurring alarms for myself to remind me when to do tasks like take my medication or before the end of the workday to take a walk. So I think I'm going to be using Magna's project here. It reminds me of some ADHD reminders I've built with Azure Functions in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I especially would recommend that tutorial if you have time to check out Chloe's blog on an ADHD reminder app. It was pretty awesome. I learned a lot from that tutorial. But Megna, we're super excited for your presentation. We can't wait to hear more. So take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. So, hello everyone. My name is Meghna. I'm a rising senior at Maine West High School in Des Plaines, Illinois. And today I'll be talking about my project on the scheduling bot. So, what exactly is a scheduling bot? A scheduling bot is a chatbot that takes user input to help send out reminders via text. To describe how it works, once a user logs on, the bot will ask them a few questions as seen here, such as your name, your phone number, and the event name and date. And it's quite easy to interact with and requires very minimal effort. And once you're finish chatting with the bot, it'll transfer that information to a database and send out a reminder in no less than an hour prior to the event time. To explain how I got to this point, along with my thought process while brainstorming a few ideas, I actually started out with a plan to create a health and fitness app, which would allow the user to ask a few questions and then create a customized calendar based on the preferences that they entered. However, I started to realize that that was way too complex for a project that I had 2 or 3 weeks to finish. So I started thinking, why don't I just create a regular calendar app where people can manage their events and appointments? And I started a unique way to present my ideas, which brought me to this point. So now I'm going to show you a demo so that you can see and visualize the final product. So as you can see here, the bot starts out by greeting the user and asking them for their name. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter in my first name. And now it'll ask me for my 10-digit US phone number. Since I've already programmed it to send text alerts to my phone, I'm just going to enter in a random number for the purposes of this demo. And since I am in Central Time, I want to send a reminder to my phone immediately. So I'm going to say 8:15 p.m. today. So that way, since it's less than an hour, I should be able to get a notification pretty soon. And I'm going to go ahead and label it demo run. So what just happened now is that it processed the information, and once the function runs through every minute to check and see if any notification needs to be sent out, then it should go straight to their phone number based on the user and send a text alert. So I actually received a text alert on my phone number. If you can see here, it says a reminder from scheduler bot saying that I have a demo run at 8:15 p.m. today, Central Time. Now that you have an idea of how the bot works, let's talk about how it's composed. There are 3 major components to the scheduling bot: the actual Azure Web App bot, the API hosted on Azure, as well as the Azure function that will run systematically to make sure that users receive notifications at the appropriate times. Here's a very quick look at a flowchart that outlines the varying interactions. As you can see on the left, the webbot will start out by asking questions, then gathers the information, calls the API, and saves that information to SQL Server. Then the Azure function will separately run every minute, call a different method of that same API, get the data, and use Twilio to send notification, and then goes back and marks it as complete. I'll be diving deeper into the 3 main components to talk about the specifics next. So I started out by using Bot Framework Composer to create a standard Azure Web App bot. There are no intents, so the bot is pretty straightforward as the user typically enters in quantified data. So as you can see here, the user will end up rotating through each of these lines. And when the user types in information, the bot will take that value and store it using different variables and validations. And so these questions and responses are those that you were able to see for the demo. And this is basically a structure of how the actual bot functions. So as you go through these questions, over here, you'll be able to see that the API calls the endpoint of the web app, which is what I'll be talking about next. And information is sent to that endpoint, allowing the user input to be stored through a SQL Server database. And then it'll expect a status code of 200, which means that everything was successful. So next, I created a SQL database and server on Azure beforehand so it can be used to store the information that the user enters into the bot. so that it can be retrieved later on, and also so that reminders can be sent out accordingly. I also set up a database to create a table to hold all of the event details that the bot collects from the user. The database is the main data layer. It is what allows us to send data by inserting a row into the table, read data, and update data in the database. I have created 3 methods to match those actions accordingly in the code, which I'll be talking about later on in this presentation. So when you first look at this, you're probably wondering, what is all of this random code? So just to sum up really quick, the code entered here is the data structure of the table that I was talking about previously. It matches what's in the database. And this is the 3 methods of the API that I was talking about. So the scheduler API has 3 main functionalities. First, it will take an event that was entered into the bot and save it to the table in the database. Second, it will supply a list of events and phone numbers that have not yet been notified and are due to be notified, and pass it on to the Azure function. And it'll also accept a request from the Azure function once the function sends the message out to mark it as complete. And those are the 3 steps that you see here: the save schedule, get schedules, and complete schedules. For my project, I also ended up using Twilio. Twilio is a developer platform for communications. I used Twilio so that I could send notifications to users accordingly. All I had to do was create an account and use the account token and SID to have it up and running and to connect it to the rest of my project. And that's how we get the reminder once we send our request through to the bot. Finally, an Azure function comes in and runs every minute to see if a new notification needs to be sent out to a user using the Twilio API. It calls the get schedules part of the API, which is over here as I described before, and supplies it with a list of all the events that have not yet been notified but are due to be notified. And then the function will loop through all of the events one by one, call Twilio, get the event name and date, and pass it on as a message. Then it'll call the update, which is the complete schedules part of the API, as I mentioned before. And as each notification is sent out, it'll mark it as complete. And so the code you see on the screen here is basically just a summary of how I made this happen. It does exclude a few things as it contains information about secrets. And I did, as Bo said, undergo mishaps when I uploaded it to GitHub, and it was not fun. So to go into why I actually started this project, I know that organization is one of many problems that people face on a daily basis. And it's true, it can be hard to keep track of everything that goes on in your life. Let's be real, we have a lot of things to monitor, like Zoom meetings for work, remembering to buy a birthday present for your cousin, or even trying not to forget to do your laundry. I mean, at least I know I do. So I thought this would be a useful program to help individuals stay up to date and on their toes. Second, I love the idea of making a chatbot. Whenever I go on a store's website and there's this automated thing answering all my questions, I'm always in astonishment, like, that's amazing, how did they do that? And since I was already interested in how chatbots work, I thought it would be a cool idea to implement it into my own program. And that's how I started working on creating a chatbot instead, inspiring a large part of my project. And lastly, the ideas that I had were perfect because I could easily implement Azure and its functionalities while I created the bot, making it an easy experience overall. So, as Seth Meyers put it, what's happening now? What just happened? So, to sum up, the webbot will ask questions, gather the information, call the API, and save that information to SQL Server. And then the Azure function runs every minute to call a different method of the API and gets the appointments, uses Twilio to send it, and goes back to mark it as complete. So to describe my experience a little bit, it was definitely a challenge as it was like riding a huge roller coaster or climbing Mount Everest because there were many restrictions and roadblocks. I'll be completely honest, I didn't even know what an API was when I first started this program, and it involved a lot of research and a lot of work since I had very little to no experience in coding. And as it says here, it involved entertaining episodes of me trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute, which I basically mean to say is that I had to throw down all these challenges in a very limited amount of time. And that was one of the main restrictions that I had. However, I loved the experience overall. I had great mentors. Shout out to Chloe, Daniel, Shreya, Julia, and so many others who were part of the team. And it was an opportunity to gain experience in the real world, unlike just going to classes in high school. So overall, I loved it. It was amazing, and I would be happy to do it all over again. And here's a link to my blog tutorial if you'd be interested in diving deeper into the specifics on how to create this project. But that's about a quick overview of it, and that's the end. Thank you for listening to my project.
Yay! Oh my gosh, that was so awesome. Chloe, I think you're muted.
I'm wiping away a single tear. I'm like, Meghna, you didn't know what an API was before this. Now you are an API superstar. How does it feel to come out on the other end? I think we've all been there in software development when we want to throw our computer across the room and we run into these roadblocks. But how does it feel to complete this awesome project?
It definitely feels great. I mean, yeah, there were those moments where I did want to throw a computer across the room, but now that it's all over, I'm extremely glad to have done it, and I would love to go through it again because it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think you had the dankest of memes, I think. Where did you get the inspiration for all of these dank memes, to decorate your project slides in the presentation?
Basically, those memes are just pieces of my moments during the project. So it's basically what I went through, and I thought it'd be interesting to share those.
Very
Definitely. And I just
relatable
want to
content.
yeah, definitely. I just want to say, thank you so much for being honest and truthful about your feelings. Because I know, at least for me, it's hard for me to admit that sometimes I want to throw my computer across the wall, because there's a bug I cannot solve. So I just want you to know there's a million of us out here that completely relate with you. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing your opinion. Chloe, did you have a question for Meghna?
Yeah, so we had a question on Twitch that said, if you had more time, how would you extend the bot? Maybe use it on a website, etc.
Yeah, I think having an app would definitely be much easier to navigate. So I think that's something I would definitely want to explore. And as well as the website, that seems like an interesting idea as well.
Definitely. Well, we really enjoyed getting to know your project more, Meghna. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Next up, I think we have Jesse.
All right. Jesse, welcome to the show.
How are you doing today, Jesse? Yep, we can hear you.
Well, okay, great. Yeah, I was muted.
So how are you doing today, Jesse?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. Awesome. So could you tell us a tiny little preview about your project?
Yeah, so basically it's a Chrome extension, and then what it does is it just analyzes articles. It's actually pretty boring. There's not much to know about the project.
I don't know about that. I think this is a pretty interesting presentation from the rehearsals that I saw. Okay. I kind of hyped this one up to a lot of people, so
Oh wait, yikes!
You got to kind of deliver, man, Jesse. We're expecting a lot from you. But anyways, so could you talk about a little bit about what technologies you use to make your project before we get started?
Well, I actually use like a huge variety of like APIs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like for my multiple types of like analysis, I had to use like I had to use like some like specialized like APIs. For example, for my sentiment analysis, I had to use the Microsoft like text analysis. I'll go into more
Mm-hmm.
details about like each of the individual APIs I use, but just in general, just know there were a lot of libraries and a lot of APIs used in the production of this project.
Definitely. Sounds super exciting. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, APIs on APIs on APIs for this project. So I'm very excited to hear you present it.
Yeah,
All right
Jesse,
then.
take it away.
Okay. So that's loaded. All right. Presentation mode time. Okay. Let's see. Hold on. Good evening. My name is Jesse and I am a junior. Oh, and also, this is my presentation for my Bit Heroes project of 2020, Content Analyzer. Yay! Okay, so let's see. First, okay. So first, looking into my like outfit and like basically everything I'm like wearing. Like, if I were you, I would probably be confused too. Like, what? So to begin, I feel like a good place to start is if we all go into like the same mindset, right? Like you have to understand like what brought the mentality of like me wanting to build this project. And to do so, we're just going to do a really simple like questionnaire. Like we're just going to do a bunch of those like yes questions, super simple stuff, so we can all understand like the pains and like the negative things that brought me to like that inspired me to like create this project. So first question, super simple, of course. Yeah, like are you tired of being bamboozled by the Illuminati? Well, obviously, see, like really simple questions, right? Like I'm telling you, very simple. Let's move on. Do you desire an illusion of control to distract you from the unstoppable tide of entropy and cosmic indifference to your existence? Well, duh. Don't you just love meaningless graphs? Obviously, who doesn't? Wouldn't it be great to let robot overlords take over the new world? That, in my opinion, would just be, as the kids call it, lit. And finally, aren't you tired of explaining to the normies that the world is actually flat? And see, like, as you could probably like notice, like all these questions were like very, very generic, yes baiting questions, and were to like get you to like, build up a repertoire. But if you somehow manage to say no to any of the questions, to that I say, too bad, because that's what my project is all about. Okay, so content analyzer, what is it actually? Okay, to put it simply, it's literally just like a Google extension. Like, those like little like spots they have on like your like Chrome browser, like Honey or like Grammarly. Like you would press them and then like there would be like a pop-up like that would show up. Yeah, my thing is basically that, but then like for me, it's like if you like press like a certain button, like it could just analyze the like article. It's actually pretty cool, but you'll see. Yeah, so I guess I should probably go into more depth about how the project, like what the project does. Oh, huh, that's weird. How did that slide end up there? Like, which narcissistic? Obviously, world peace is much more significant than my stupid project. Like, who wouldn't think that? Okay, in all seriousness, let's actually discuss what my project does. So what can the content analyzer do for you? Well, to put it simply, the content analyzer can analyze stuff. What do we mean by stuff? Well, we're defining stuff by emotional sentiment, text difficulty, and political leaning. But that's not all the content analyzer can do. What can the content analyzer do for you? Colorful graphs. They're all right. Like you'll see, like it's aesthetically pretty pleasing, and that's about it. But that's not all. What can the content analyzer do for you? to put it simply, you could get more knowledge with a content analyzer. How? By implementing a feature that I just recently added. It's pretty cool. Basically, you have your article, right? You turn on the feature, and then like what the program does is it recommends you like an article that's like semi-related. You'll see. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so to begin, let's like look through like this flowchart to see how like in a hypothetical situation like the app will work, right? So first we start with like an article, right? Like new study, lasers, Alzheimer's brain science, right? And then it goes through the Azure function, backend, front end, whatever, just the code. And then the end result is you basically get analysis. In this case, this is a sentiment analysis, but it could be a multiple types of like analysis depending on which one you turn on. And additionally, if you turn on the other setting and with the other like big brain feature, you can get like a semi-related article. In this case, like U.S. patent a device to make laser ghosts planes in midair. So yeah, lasers, semi-related. Okay, so now let's actually like go through a demo and see how it actually works in practice. So right here, what we have is it's a very long article. I chose it for this very purpose, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to actually see an action. As you can see right here, I already installed the content linear launcher onto my like browser, and now I'm going to actually turn on and let it go. So yeah, as you can see, cool like design, aesthetically pleasing. I made this on Canva, pretty proud of myself. So yeah, I'm just going to turn on the check sentiment. So yeah, the final result appeared, and it's going to start loading. It's going to take a while, so just let it be. In the meantime, I think probably be a good idea. Yeah, wearing in my opinion, like wearing like a tinfoil hat is kind of like putting on sunscreen. Like you just like every 2 hours you go like reapply a layer, dude. Like gotta keep it chill. Okay, as you can see, in the sentiment analysis, what's currently happening is that like the article is being broken down because you see how it's like a super long article. It's being broken down into multiple segments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and each segment is taking the average value of like that like the sentiment of like that part, and then comparing it to each other until like the final aspect. So as you can see, the article starts off pretty neutral, but eventually like deteriorates down to like a more negative article, and as a result, we see the final result is negative. Okay, and that's sentiment analysis. Another graph we have is text difficulty analysis. But for this graph, I'm going to be implementing my my big brain feature by adding the search for loosely connected articles. To do that, I'm just going to turn it on, and you see the asterisk indicates it's on, and I will just text in my number. Okay, yeah, so check difficulty. So let me just explain what each of these variables mean. So ASL, average sentence length, ASW, average syllable per word, and difficulty score is the metric we're after. Basically, this is based on a flash reading score, and basically how it works is higher number is easier, lower number is harder. So 140 would probably be like kindergarten level of like text difficulty, and 0 would probably be like college graduate levels of text difficulty. And as you can see, after the project runs, I get a notification that to check my phone, and by check my phone, they mean like check my phone number, right? So yeah. And oh, in case you're curious, yes, this number, this way, like password input is actually my actual phone number. And yes, I have to censor it because this is going to like an actual video, and I don't want to be like doxed or something. And yes, the reason I'm telling you all this is in a secret like bid for attention because I'm actually really lonely. And yes, I am in fact single. And yes, the only form of communication I've had over the course of this quarantine is through a self-designed messaging bot. Oh, right, presentation. Okay, so yeah, ignore all of that. I'm just going to show you what my team did. Okay, so basically what like an alternative article that's like semi-related to it. And basically, this is broken down into three messages. The first is the title, the second is the URL, and finally ends with the description. So yeah, that's what it looks like. You probably can't tell anything, but like, just trust me, it's there. So for example, for this article name, it's Israel UAE to normalize relationship and Middle East politics with ban annexations on hold. How this has to relate to high-tech cowboys on the deep seas, it's beyond me, but here's the thing. I'm not smarter than a robot, and neither are you. So it be what it be. Okay, and finally, we have another type of analysis, and this is the political leaning analysis. Unfortunately, like it was working like perfectly like the entire day before, but for some reason, when I had it today, the API I was using and the endpoint was broken. So let me just show you. For example, like this is like the endpoint you would usually do. Like the organization I got this like endpoint from was called the Bipartisan Press. They're basically this nonprofit organization that specializes in developing like an API and like developing tools to help combat like fake news by like measuring the political like leaning bias and like leaning of an article. And I specifically
Guys, I think the Illuminati got Jesse.
Yeah, I was
And
just saying, I think the Illuminati has taken control of the stream here. Maybe removing the tinfoil hat, we can put it back on. But Jesse, can you hear us? All right.
Jesse, if the Illuminati has gotten you, like you can't not call us for help because I don't want to be involved. I am scared of the Illuminati. You get me.
Well, I have a feeling because Jesse was running his project on his computer, there's a chance that maybe streaming and the demo maybe has pushed him out of the stream for now, but we will wait for Jesse to come back and we'll ask him some questions. I love this project, Daniel. This is such a fun project. Beyond the tinfoil hat, of course, I should mention there's no IoT elements through the tinfoil hat. But I love in a time where political bias is so important to determine in articles, we now have this awesome in-browser tool that we can use to determine which way it's leaning.
Definitely. I feel like sometimes when I'm reading news articles, I don't know if I'm like changing, like if the article is changing my mind because it's facts or because it has a certain political leaning. So I feel like a Chrome extension like this really could help me figure out, like, am I being influenced by the Illuminati? That's a real important question nowadays. I feel like, especially since the election is coming up.
And alrighty, well, we'll wait for Jesse to come back here. Oh, do we have an update here? Alrighty, the joy of live performance, live theater, y'all. Alrighty.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, I'll let you take it away, Daniel.
Yeah, so we are talking to Justin, who has been the project manager for all of our heroes. Hey, Justin, how are you doing today?
Justin!
Yeah, doing great.
Can you talk closer to the mic? We can't hear you very well.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I can
Okay, if you have to yell, please yell. It's okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Awesome. So we just wanted to get a sneak peek into your experiences as a PM. How's it been? How's it been working with these students?
So it's really been a great experience. Prior to this, I've never really had anything.
Definitely. Chloe, can you kind of explain what a PM does and why you think it's important for students to get exposed to what PMs do?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we are building products as software engineers, obviously we need the people who are writing the code and creating the actual features and applications. But oftentimes there's so many pieces to be done, especially at larger organizations, that someone needs to be in charge of that. Make sure things are done on time, make sure things are scheduled correctly, that certain features are being implemented, that the MVP, which we learned in this program, minimum viable product, is ready to go. For example, for the students who were in the Bit Projects Bitcamp, we had a goal to have all their projects done and rehearsed and the tutorials done in time for these lovely presentations. So PMs are, I have so many superstar PMs in my life who help me complete tasks every single day and remind me to do things, which reminds me I have to do something for my PM. Sorry about that. But yeah, PMs are sort of the glue. As I mentioned before, I come from a theater background. And in theater, we have something called stage managers who, if you ever go see a musical like Hamilton or a play on Broadway or any show for that matter, there are folks whose job it is to just make sure all the actors get there on time, that all the lights, the sets, the director, all the communication is going well. And the PMs are really the stage managers of technology.
Definitely, I totally relate. So, Justin, do you want to talk a little bit more about your experience as a PM and take away to your presentation?
Yeah, for sure. Let me just present real quick. So hopefully y'all can see my screen right now. Y'all see that? Um,
Are you sure?
so my name is
Mm.
and I am the engineer. So
I guess we are
about me.
experiencing. Oh wait, are we
So
good?
a little bit about me. Can you hear me? So a little
Yeah.
bit about me.
We can't really hear you, but
Um,
this is very normal. No need to freak out. There's always technical difficulties I find in these events. So I think we're gonna invite everyone in. I think just to do a general Q&A because everyone has presented except Justin. Justin, I think we're gonna put a video of your presentation like on our YouTube, so other people can watch what's your experience. Um, so yeah, I think me and Chloe are just gonna do a quick Q&A slash uh, a kind of a wrap up of our experience as like mentoring students, and then yeah, that's pretty much will be our webinar for today. So, Chloe, do you have any like lasting words of wisdom that you want to impart upon the future of software engineers?
Oh my goodness. Well, like I said earlier on in this webinar, presentation, live stream, whatever we're calling it, I feel like it's a graduation ceremony. I keep thinking of like vitamin C's, like, as we go on, we remember. But I am truly so proud of these students. When I was in high school, I certainly wasn't creating anything as impactful or cool, or certainly not technical like these projects, and I am just floored by the amount that they were able to accomplish in such a short time. We heard from so many students who said this is their first time working with an API, or they learned what an API was, or maybe it was their first time ever having to deal with, I remember we were helping some students debug their authentication using OAuth, using all of these things that as software engineers, we all have to learn for the first time, and we often learn that on the job. So what's been really fantastic about this program and fantastic about what all the students are walking away with from this is not only did they build awesome projects, number one, like, first of all, round of applause to that. I'm getting teary-eyed just watching how incredible these projects are. But they got to learn how to contribute on GitHub, how to collaborate with a PM, how to present their projects, how to make documentation. These are all tutorials that exist online. So if you're watching at home and you decide, hey, I want to build a chatbot, I've never done that before, or oh my goodness, Bo and his made from scratch IoT device, are you kidding me? So these are all out in the wild now, and these students are walking away with real life career skills that they're going to be able to use out in the real world. And I can't wait for them to be.
Yeah, wait for these students to be my bosses in a couple of years. Wait, Megna, I guess you're here. Hey, Megna, how are you doing? Are you there?
Good, I'm doing good.
I think I
I'm
am.
here.
Okay, cool. So Megna, like, what would you say, like, as we are wrapping up, what would you say to future folks who want to like participate in this program? Like, do you have any like words of wisdom, advice that you could give to these students?
Yeah, I would definitely say go for it. While it may seem like a challenging opportunity, it's definitely a chance for you to learn more about coding and new ideas and working different platforms, as well as gaining research skills. So definitely, this is something I would recommend to all high school students. And I feel like it's a great way for you to get better with your skills and just gain real world experience in tech.
Definitely. Thank you so much for participating again, Megna. We loved your project. It was so cool.
Yes.
Natalie.
Hi.
So yeah, now that you have done your webinar, like, and would you have any words of wisdom, advice for future Bit project heroes?
Future applicants.
Yep,
Yeah, definitely go for it. It'll be challenging. And also, if you write that Natalie is cool in your application, I'll admit you. So, pro tip.
There you go.
Natalie, definitely. Thanks, Natalie, for your insightful, I guess, philosophy of being Natalie being really cool. So thank you so much. Okay. Do we have anyone else that want to give comments? Jesse, you are back. Jesse, do you have any lasting words of wisdom you want to impart upon the non-Illuminati folks that want to apply to the project, especially be part of the Heroes?
Get good. Like honestly, just like programming itself isn't like that hard. Like you just pick a language and like actually learn it. And then, like from there on, like everything else, like you could just find online. Like there's plenty of sources online where you like the learning curve isn't really like that bad. I guess.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
basically, don't give away the secret of engineering, Jesse, which is we just Google and Bing everything. We just go on Stack Overflow and use open source for all the answers. Shh, that's a secret. We can't let everybody know.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that like if you're interested in applying or being part of this program and you don't feel like you're smart enough, you don't feel like you're good enough, feel free to apply. A lot of our students, like Lisa, like didn't have a lot of experience in APIs. Don't mean to call you out Lisa, but you know, I didn't either
Oh my
until I
goodness. I
so
encourage everyone to apply. I'm sure that I would have been terrified to apply. Like I look back on when I was first starting a program and all of these projects, and I thought, I can't make an app like that. That's crazy. And seeing all these high school students make these apps make me realize that even as a 30-year-old who started programming much, much later in her life, in her late 20s, like this is so inspiring to me. And I can't wait to show these to new programmers, folks who are just learning, other high school students, because what y'all have made is incredible. I couldn't have made this when I was in high school. So bravo, y'all.
So we just want to say that applications to join the next cohort of students, of these amazing students, will be open next Monday. So if you're interested, please go to our Discord, which is join.bitproject.org, and we will have more information about that on there. So Lisa, before we go and ask Bo, do you have any like thoughts on your experience at Bit Project and like what you learned so far and like how you plan on applying the skills you learned in your future?
Ooh, you may be muted.
Yeah, I was muted. But yeah, I would say for like as an overall lesson from my experience, I think I would just say that you have so many resources available, not even from the internet, although obviously you have GitHub and Stack Overflow and all these different resources, but you usually have all these mentors and people that you can even reach out to like without ever knowing them, and they're usually pretty willing to help you. So yeah, you really shouldn't ever be discouraged if you feel like, you don't know anything, or like you just don't have a lot of experience or people who can help you, since basically the whole internet is your helper. So as long as you have that, which you do, you'll be good.
It's so true. The internet and open source for the win, truly. There's so many. I think the biggest epiphany to me was just how many people out in the world want to help new developers. So many people cheering you on over here from the interwebs. Okay, people may be on mute.
I think you're muted,
I should get that on a shirt.
I always play the game of where can I find the mute button. It's very hard sometimes. So anyways, Bo, you're the last kind of developer that we have left to talk to. What do you think about your overall experience at BitProject so far? And what have you learned? And how do you think you can apply those in your future?
I've learned a lot through the I guess it's called Camp program now. A lot of skills, like whether it's using GitHub, whether it's using Azure, or even programming. I learned just the basic skills of looking for open source projects. But I also learned how to work with the team, reach out to mentors, and it was a super fun and educational experience.
Wow, that is really awesome. So, Chloe, do you have anything that you want to ask Bo, especially about his athletic prowess?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I literally tweeted out during Bo's presentation just how brave Bo is to not only do a live technical demo, but to do one that involves an IoT device built from scratch, and he had to do jumping jacks for it. So it's literally like the literal version of rubbing your belly and patting your head. Like, all of the things worked. It was great. I'm so proud over here in Oakland cheering you on that you built this amazing project that I know at times made you want to throw your IoT device across the room, but I'm so glad that you didn't, because it works and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and we would love to see your project if you add modifications to it in the future. So please tweet it at us so we can tweet it out so we can see hopefully your grandpa who is watching, hopefully, to actually wear it and then test it out. It'd be pretty cool.
I'll ship it out to where he is.
You should
Wow.
consider entering the Imagine Cup, the Microsoft Imagine Cup. This reminds me a lot of the projects that are done through there. So maybe we have a future Imagine Cup winner in our midst, Daniel.
Yeah, I think I should get a portion of the scholarship. I'm kidding. Anyways,
Wow.
We'll give you a quarter of the cup, okay? It's the actual cup.
Yeah, I'll just take a quarter. But anyways, I want to thank Chloe for being an amazing mentor for all of our students. She is the bomb. So if you didn't already know that, please, you should check her out. Also, her hair is very orange. It's like a
Oh, I
Cheeto.
didn't do anything. It's all these kids. I just helped them shine even brighter than they already are. And yes, my hair is becoming the reincarnation of the Nickelodeon logo. Thank you for noticing.
You're welcome. Well, anyways, that is it to our first webinar and our first thing on Twitch. I'm going to be very cliche. Please go follow us on Twitch. But other than that, yeah, thanks for coming and have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and see you later.